Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Pens Iceberg. I'm your host, Casey Stamp, along with my partner, Jason Kaczynski. How you doing tonight, Jason?
I'm doing pretty good, Casey. It was nice to see the boys pull a couple of points out of an otherwise forgettable road trip.
I would agree with you there. Certainly a couple of games in Florida and Carolina that you're going to have short memories with and sort of erase those and move on. But, hey, you know, even in a 7-6 victory, at least in the regular season, it's good to see the Pens get the 2 points that way with the overtime goal from Sutter. We will have more on both that game and the game in Carolina coming up shortly here. Warner will not be joining us tonight for Warner's Corner, but we will have a very interesting segment. For those of you who follow us on Twitter, this might particularly interest you, as we had sort of a dialogue with another very big Pittsburgh analyst known as Evil Shero, who wrote an article and used one of our quotes in it. And we sort of went back and forth this morning. Either way, you can look it up on Twitter. It'll be at Pens Iceberg. You can look us up there, and it should show you sort of all the stuff that we talked about this morning. And we're going to read the article to you, read a couple of selections, read some of our tweets, and read some of his tweets, and we'll go back and forth on it, and we'll give a balanced opinion there. And then we'll also answer any Twitter questions or comments or phone calls that we may have. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come right back and get started on the game analysis.
Hey, Cleveland Browns fans, did you know the Dogs have some serious support on Facebook? That's right, Facebook.com/DogsBlog is your source for everything Cleveland Browns news. It's run by Browns fans for Browns fans. At Facebook.com/DogsBlog, you'll get up-to-the-minute news and information about the team, individual players, stats, you name it. Can you say cyber tailgate? Join the fun today. Go to Facebook.com/DogsBlog.
Welcome back in here to the Pens Iceberg. We're going to start with the game against the Carolina Hurricanes on Thursday, and this was an interesting game. Obviously, Jordan Staal playing his first game against the Penguins, vice versa for Brandon Sutter in the Hurricanes. Would have been cool to see Zach Boychuk play this game as well against his former team, but Zach Boychuk, for whatever reason, has been a healthy scratch for a long time. We'll talk more about that, too, because I want to get into why he would be a scratch over Tyler Kennedy, who's been basically invisible since forever, since 2011. But we'll get into that more later. In the first period of this game, it was actually the Pens who got on the board first with Chris Kunitz, and what a season Chris Kunitz is having to this point. Assists to Sidney Crosby and Matt Niskanen. Partner, can you just talk for a moment about how important Chris Kunitz has been to this team, and especially when you think about a team that is first in the league in goals for?
Absolutely. I honestly, I'm going to miss the All-Star game this year just for the simple fact that I think if it were played, I think Chris Kunitz would have had a pretty decent shot to make his first ever All-Star game. He's playing that well. Obviously playing on Sidney Crosby line is going to keep you in the limelight and give you some good opportunities, but he's sitting pretty at fourth in the league right now in scoring. But he's such a smart hockey player. Just noticing some things about him on the power play last night. He's not a big guy, but he was parked right in front of the goal, and he's so good with his stick. I mean, getting the puck on forehand to backhand and just trying to, do anything he can to get an edge. He's not the fastest guy. He doesn't have the strongest shot, but he does just about every little thing well. What's really impressed me so far this season is his one-timer, which he really hasn't had a chance to display over the last maybe couple of years, but he's gotten some great looks this season, and Sid seems to find him, and he's just nailing it. The other thing too, he's just developing some chemistry. I mean, that top line. It was nice to see them kind of reunited, I think, for a little bit. I know you want to try to get James Neal some time with Sid and develop some chemistry there. But the Crosby to Kunitz line is it's pretty high flying, and they know exactly what they're doing. So Chris Kunitz is one of those guys that's very underrated, but just does everything well, and he's really lighting the lamp this year. So if sorry to see it being a short season, to see how many points he could actually put up over 82 game pace, but he's on fire right now.
Definitely, and some really great points. I would love to see Chris Kunitz make the All-Star game. I mean, you look at a guy like Joffrey Lupul who made it last year. If a guy like Joffrey Lupul can make it, I think that Chris Kunitz can make it into the All-Star game. It would be cool to see him on Sid's line in the All-Star game. That would just be cool to bring that chemistry over into the All-Star break and see it flourish all season. Obviously, in a short year would be cool. That would obviously be next year if Chris Kunitz were to make it into the All-Star game. By the way, canceled for this season, I believe. But for future, I think he could make it, especially if he can keep up the way that he's playing. And I think he's really improved his shot this year. You talked about that one-timer. That's really improved. And as you said, we haven't got a lot we haven't been able to see a lot of that in the past as much. But he's really improved it this year. And, Sidney Crosby's really getting him on the board. And vice versa. Sidney Crosby's been getting a lot more goals than I expected him to. Certainly, I expected him to finish in the top three in scoring, but he's usually a guy that has far more assists than goals, and I've been impressed with his shot. When he does shoot, I've been impressed with his shot this year. However, the rest of this game did go the Canes' way. Pretty much every other second of this game was all Hurricanes, and it was Eric Staal in the first tying it up with his 10th of the year, assists to Alex Semin and Yuri Tulusti. By the way, I'm really impressed with Yuri Tulusti. This is a guy who's been great for the Carolina Hurricanes. You'd think of him as a third-line player, but he's really so much more than that. He's their version of Chris Kunitz. He's a physical presence, and he can also score, and he can also shoot, too. And then he, of course, would put the Canes ahead 2-1 in the second period with his 8th of the year. And then later in the second period, it was both Jeff Skinner and Yuri Tulusti once again with his second of the night, making it a 4-1 game for the Carolina Hurricanes, and that is where the game would end. But what I really want to talk about here and focus in on is the play of Eric Staal this year, because it has really been something to marvel at. Now, we know how great of a player that Eric Staal is. I don't think that there's any doubting that he's the most talented of the Staal brothers, but he sort of had a down year for his standards, at least last season. He's one of the NHL's highest paid players. You certainly expect him to be in that 90-95 point range per season, and he definitely looks to be, if this were a full-length season, to be in that sort of form. Can you talk just a little bit about Eric Staal and his turnaround and how big it's been for the Hurricanes to come back and reclaim first in the Southeast?
Yeah, he's the straw that pretty much stirs the Carolina drink. As Eric Staal goes, that team will go. I mean, granted, they can get great performances, and Cam Ward can carry them for a couple of games at a time if the offense isn't clicking and so forth. But he had his share of troubles last year, and it showed. It was just his body language, and I don't know whether it's just his brother being there now and taking a little bit of the pressure off, or just being maybe healthy for the first time in a little bit, just getting rid of some nagging injuries. But he looks like the Eric Staal of old. I mean, he's got one of the longest sticks, and I'm sure Bob Berry would appreciate that, but he's got one of the longest sticks in the league, and he can dangle. For a center his size, it's just impressive to see. He's got a lot of physical tools that make him great, and that's definitely one of them. I think just having a different mix of players too. They went out and spent some money on so Alexander Semin, who you know what you're going to get from him. It's just he's got somebody to pass the puck to here and there. I just think he's a great leader. He's a good captain. He's a good guy to have. Great at face-offs. He's developed that nicely over the last 4 or 5 years. He's just he looks like he's just in a comfortable place, probably on and off the ice, and it just looks like it's flowing for him right now, and you got to take it when you can get it.
And a really great leader, too. I mean, as a spiritual leader for that Carolina Hurricanes team, he's been there through all of it, and I think he's one of the better captains in the NHL, and so many of his points, his goals this year have come right around that net area. He's so good in front, and he's got those long arms and that long reach that really makes him dangerous to goalies who can't, get across the crease, pretty quickly. And so the Carolina Hurricanes have done a lot better this season than last season to this point. And for the Penguins, I think you can definitely tell that Jordan Staal is not there anymore. Now, that's not to say that Brandon Sutter is not a great player, because Brandon Sutter is exactly what you would want in a third line center, exactly what you would want. And Jordan Staal was a luxury, and I think a lot of Pens fans knew that. You're not going to get to keep a guy like that on the third line forever. I mean, he's a second line center in the NHL. I don't know that I think he would be a first line center on any team, but he's certainly the prototype second line center. He's a spectacular penalty killer, and I think that's really where the Penguins have missed him most this year. In any case, the Carolina Hurricanes do win that one by a score of 4-1, 8 penalties for both teams. So penalties continue to be a problem for the Pens, and the Carolina Hurricanes outshot the Pens 29-27 in this game. We're going to play you Brooks Orpik's post-game comments.
Surprised? You ever get surprised by structures like this from a team that's got as much success as you guys have had and has shown as much character?
I get surprised. I don't think anything really surprises me. There's a lot of good teams in the league, and if you don't play well enough, it's I don't care who you're playing against. There's so much parity in the league now. Teams make you look awfully bad, and that's what happened tonight.
What are some areas that the team needs to clean up to get back to winning early in the year?
Well, you could throw a blanket over the area. They scored 4 goals tonight, so probably our own zone, specifically around our net.
Are you safe to say that you're concerned about how many battles are being lost, or how many battles aren't even engaged in to begin with?
That was a little concerning, I think. I think the sign of a good team or a sign of a good player is if you make a mistake once, you don't make that same mistake again, and obviously you made 4 similar mistakes, so that's not very good. And, until we realize and identify the mistakes we're making, they're not going to be corrected. I think that's the first step to correcting them, is admitting what we're doing wrong and realizing what we're doing wrong.
Is this personnel or just execution?
That's for someone else, not me.
Boy, and if Tone of Voice ever told the story, that's a case right there. He definitely wasn't happy after that one, and rightfully so. I mean, you know, as he said, they're losing a lot of battles, especially in that game, right behind the net, and all the goals sort of came from the same area, and that's the struggles we are seeing defensively. But in any case, the Pens moved on, and we played the Montreal Canadiens last night. If you love goals, you love that game. You got to see a lot of them, especially late in the game, a ton of goals, and the Pens and Habs went goal for goal in this game. Really not a fun one to watch if you're a fan of either of the teams, but as I said, if you're a fan of goals and definitely a fan of hockey, from an outsider perspective, it must have been a lot of fun. Early in the game, it was Montreal getting on the board first. The former Ranger, Brandon Pruss, with his third of the year, and Thomas Caberlet with the assist. And then striking right back with the Penguins, Brandon Sutter, his 5th of the year, with assist to Chris Letang and Bo Bennett. And that was just toward the end of the period to tie it up going into the second. Now, I will be the first to admit this. Just before the game, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I criticized the shot of Brandon Sutter because, you know, Staal had a rangy shot to him. It's odd to describe. I mean, it wasn't, you know, the shot that you're going to see from like Evgeny Malkin or anything, but it definitely had zip on it. And I think you saw that in the series last year against the Flyers, especially in the 2 games that the Penguins were able to win in that series. And I was saying that perhaps, you know, the trade-off between Sutter and Staal is A, size, obviously, but B, was really that shot that Jordan Staal had that he could score on pretty often, especially in his earlier seasons. And boy, did Brandon Sutter prove me wrong. Everything you want in a shot in this game. And in the second period, it went goal for goal. Max Pacioretty and then Chris Kunitz put the Penguins tied. Matt Cook with back-to-back goals put the Penguins ahead, but then it was Brian Gionta and PK Subban coming the other way. Now, a curious decision by Dan Bylsma in this one, and we definitely will talk more about Dan Bylsma in the show, but he decided to start Tomas Vokoun in net for this game. I, for one, just can't understand why he would make that decision. Fleury has been playing well despite, you know, giving up a few goals in Carolina. I don't really think any of those goals were specifically on him. Partner, could you shed some light on maybe why Dan Bylsma would start Vokoun in this game and just why Vokoun has been struggling so mightily lately?
Well, I think the Vokoun nod is pretty curious because obviously, Fleury is a French-Canadian goaltender, and it's kind of an unwritten rule, but it seems like when those players go back to Montreal and all of them kind of grew up within the area, Laval or Sorel and different places, you want to get him a start there. And Fleury's played great over in Montreal over the course of his career, and I just couldn't fathom why Tomas Vokoun would get the start tonight, other than the fact that, we heard at the beginning of the season that Vokoun was slated to get a decent percentage of games. What that number was, I don't know if it was 30 to 40%, whatever it was. But having said that, I don't think his last start generated enough enthusiasm for me to get him in there right away, especially the way Fleury's been playing. I mean, Fleury kept the Penguins in the game early against Carolina. You can't, like you said, you can't blame him on some of those goals when they're coming from behind the net. He's got to hug the post to prevent the wraparound, and you give up to a guy who's coming unguarded down the slot. But I definitely would have liked to see Marc-Andre Fleury start in Montreal. He's had good success there, and like I said, he's probably been one of the Pens' best players all year. Vokoun is not playing well right now. There's not a lot to like about his game. His rebound control is really throwing this team for a loop, and I did not like the Brian Gionta goal last night. It's tough because he signed him to a 2-year deal, and he's had some success in the past. He's been a pretty hard goaltender, but at the end of the day, I mean, the guys in front of him are the ones that have to play for him, and I don't know if the players are going to get frustrated when they see some of the rebounds and the back goals here and there. I mean, you're going to have that once in a while, but when it becomes consistent, it becomes a team problem. So
I would agree, and especially when talk about the rebound control, you just can't get it together in that aspect this season. I don't think he's played well since the Washington game, really. And in that game, even when we defeated the Capitals, he had that one goal where I believe it was he skated behind the back of the net, and the goal just sort of went into an empty net, took a weird bounce. I don't know. I mean, when you look at Tomas Vokoun and certainly his portfolio of work, very, very impressive. He was basically the only aspect that kept that Florida team even mildly in the loop for those years. And this year, for whatever reason, he just he can't. I don't know. Maybe it's the lockout, and maybe he didn't prepare enough or prepared too much and just got fatigued by the time the year came around. But in any case, Vokoun has been struggling lately. Hopefully he can get that turned around, because you certainly don't want to see the same type of problems that Fleury had last year, not being able to rely on Brent Johnson to be able to come in and give the Penguins a chance to win. So in any case, hopefully there's a guy that gets it turned around. So in the third period of this game, the scoring was started by David Desharnais of the Montreal Canadiens, his 5th of the year, assist to Emelin and Andrei Markov. But then it was Chris Kunitz tying it right back up with his 11th, again going back to Kunitz. Fantastic work this year, been so huge for the Pens. And then it was Crosby putting the Pens ahead 6-5 with his 10th of the year. Letang had 4 points in this game, and I actually heard something interesting now. I would have to fact check this, but this is just what I heard. He had 4 points in this game and was still a -2. Chris Letang, great defenseman in terms of being a good offensive defenseman. At a lot of times, though, can be a real defensive liability and really relies heavily on his athleticism. I mean, how many times do you see him, give up the puck and then have to? He can get there so quickly and cover up for the mistakes, but I mean, sometimes he could be a defensive liability. Either way, rambling on, Brian Gionta tied the game, and that was the goal that Jason referred to that was definitely soft on Vokoun's part, sort of a slap shot from the far end boards, almost from the blue line. And I really don't know if he didn't see it or if he just had a bad angle on it or what the deal was, but that tied it at 6. As I said, if you're a Pens or Habs fan, this game was not a lot of fun to watch. And another one of the interesting things about this game was Michael Therrien and his, first game against the Pittsburgh Penguins as the coach of the Montreal Canadiens. I can tell you, neither coach was happy. The expression on both of their faces really said a million words, especially Dan Bylsma did not look happy at the end of the second period. So we went into an overtime period, and it didn't take too long before Brendan Sutter was the hero of the game, his sixth of the year, winning it for the Pittsburgh Penguins 7-6. Dupre and James Neal on the assist for that goal. We actually do have the goal for you, and we'll play it right now.
He stays after it. Dupre skated away from him, and they get down there. He takes the pass, drops it back. Good chance here. Sutter scores!
Gets the puck over to Neal. There's Dupre checking. There's Sutter. Now a little stutter step around Pacioretty. High glove on Carey Price, and it just looked as though, these goalies kind of had a feeling that, please don't get a chance on me. That's not a confident Carey Price right there.
Fifth goal of the season for Brandon Sutter.
Another thing is, you don't ever see Carey Price give up 7 goals. I mean, he's one of the most phenomenal goaltenders in the league, probably going to be the starting goaltender for Team Canada. So certainly an off game for Carey Price of the Habs, but Brandon Sutter gets the overtime goal. Really a great moment for him, and as I said, I was wrong about his shot. I was the first to criticize it. Shouldn't have done so. He proved me wrong in this game. Good on him, and it's good to see him getting a game winner after he seemingly should have had what was a great goal in the Philadelphia game, and then only to give it up just a few seconds later and have Philly get that win. Good to see Brandon Sutter to get that win, and we do have his post-game interview here.
Yeah, it's I think you ask both teams, it's probably not the best way to win a game when you give up 6 goals, but on a road trip and a road trip like that, and I think it's a great win. I think we still felt we played pretty well, and we have to get a little tougher on our own net to keep some pucks out, but that's a good win, and it feels pretty good. Yeah, I just think Nealer drove the middle and kicked it wide to Desi, and he just found me as a wide guy, and I just kind of one guy to step around, and I just tried to put my head down and shoot it. So it worked out good, and it felt pretty good too. Yeah. I just go on the net, and Tanger tries to shoot the puck, one off something, and it comes right to you. So those are the ones you always want to take. They're the easy ones, but sometimes you get an open net, it can actually be harder. But it's a nice way for us to get a win at the end of a roadie.
So you did hear the words of Brandon Sutter there. And quickly, before we go to commercial here, it's tough to say that in the short term the Penguins could have the advantage on that trade with Stahl, but certainly in the long term we possibly could, because you never know how guys like Brian Dumoulin and certainly Derek Pouliot that we took with that pick might turn out. What is your impression so far on the year of Brandon Sutter, partner?
Well, one of the things that when he came over said he wanted to be utilized in all areas of the game, whether it be shorthanded, even strength, power play, and his first goal last night was on the power play. It was a power play goal, and with Gino being out right now, he's getting a chance to play more minutes in a more of a top 6 role, and I think he's equipped to play there. He's playing, but you can throw James Neal on that line, and they developed some chemistry a little bit already. He had 7 shots. He led the team with 7 shots yesterday, and he's kind of finding his niche. And I think he does all the other little things right. He's a good two-way center. He's a good defensive center first off, so he usually gets a tough assignment right off the bat. And if you keep adding little things over the course of the season to his repertoire and just let him kind of take on a little bit more, I think you're going to see him grow as a player. I don't know what the feeling is for him offensively. It's kind of hard to ballpark. I mean, I could see him, perennially as a 20, 25 goal scorer. I mean, I don't see why that's probably out of reach. I don't know if it'd be like a Cy Young kind of candidate where he'd have a bunch of goals and not too many assists. But he picked, and you're right about his shot though, because a great play by Simone Dupre to get the puck up the center of the ice to Neal and back to Dupre, and he found Sutter coming down, and Sutter really picked his spot. It was just inside the right post, and Price really had to scramble to push off and get over there, and he didn't make it in time. But he's got the hockey genes and the hockey IQ, and I think he's a perfect fit. Like you said, he doesn't mind being on the third line or being labeled a third line center and adding these other responsibilities. So he's a good fit for Pittsburgh, a good fit for the Pens, and nice to see him hopefully kind of grow as a player over the next couple of years.
Definitely well said, and a great moment for him to get that game winner. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to have some Around the NHL news for you, and we're going to talk about that article with Evil Shero, who is listening in, by the way. Shout out to him. If you don't follow him on Twitter, follow Evil Shero. Seriously, if you don't, you're missing out on some great hockey analysis and, occasionally a really funny tweet. So follow him. We're going to go to commercial break. We're going to talk. Come right back and talk to you about that.
Hey, Cleveland Browns fans, did you know the Dogs have some serious support on Facebook? That's right, Facebook.com/DogsBlog is your source for everything Cleveland Browns news. It's run by Browns fans for Browns fans. At Facebook.com/DogsBlog, you'll get up-to-the-minute news and information about the team, individual players, stats, you name it. Can you say cyber tailgate? Join the fun today. Go to Facebook.com/DogsBlog.
Welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit about Around the NHL here. Let's go around the NHL and take a look at the scoreboard. First game of the day, Chicago and Detroit. Okay, if you missed this one, I'm not joking. Go back, find a way to watch it. Maybe the most entertaining game you're going to see this year. Talk about a battle. And unfortunately, if this realignment plan does go through, there is a rivalry that we're going to lose because Detroit is going to be moved to the east. And that would be such an unfortunate rivalry to lose. Just one of the many reasons I don't like the realignment plan. But Chicago and Detroit was a great game. 2-1 final in the shootout. It's hard to say if the Chicago Blackhawks will ever lose another game this season. Another good one, Ottawa Senators and New York Islanders. The Isles get the 3-2 win there. Colorado and Columbus. Columbus gets the 2-1 win off an Artem Anisimov goal of the former Ranger Artem Anisimov there. And Dallas and St. Louis. Dallas gets the 4-1 victory over the Blues. Carolina and Florida. Carolina handles the Florida Panthers, winning 3-2, keeping their momentum going. Montreal and Boston. There's never been a dull game between those two bitter rivals. Montreal actually gets the win over Boston in this one. I picked it to go the other way, but, shows me wrong there. They were prepared after a really hectic game last night, and kudos to Montreal for the win there. Buffalo and the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers get the 3-2 win there. Edmonton and Minnesota. Minnesota gets the 4-2 win. And finally, the Calgary Flames and the Vancouver Canucks. Calgary's done a lot better as of late. They get the win 4-2 over Vancouver. So just a little bit of around the NHL news. Let's talk just for a moment about this realignment plan. Now, as I understand the realignment plan, the conferences would not be balanced. It is 2 conferences, East and West, as it is now, but rather than 6 divisions, it would go to 4. Now, supposedly, this realignment plan was almost all about geography, but there are a few things in this case that don't make sense to me. If it's about geography, and by the way, I encourage you, if you don't know about the realignment plan, just look it up. It should be on NHL.com. You could really find it on one of any number of sites. Just look it up on Google. I'm sure you'll be able to find some of it. But they would be moving Carolina and Columbus into Pittsburgh's division. Now, I guess I can understand Columbus being there. Carolina, I can't say so much. And then they have Buffalo and Boston in the Central Division, which I don't understand because Boston is farther east than Pittsburgh is. So certainly if it's about geography, you would think that, Boston would be in a division with Pittsburgh. Although I understand because they're keeping Montreal in the Central Division, and maybe you don't want to lose that 6-game-a-year rivalry there. Now, the other issue is because they're moving Detroit over and also Columbus over to the Eastern Conference, the conferences are going to be unbalanced. There's going to be 2 more teams in the Eastern Conference than there is in the Western Conference, meaning that it will be, in a sense, more difficult to make the playoffs in the East than it is in the West. Partner, tell me what you think about this new realignment plan. Do you think it's going to work? Do you think it's going to go through? And do you have any alternatives or any ways that you would improve upon it?
I hate it. That's the short version of it.
There you go.
I don't like it whatsoever, and it's like it's going to be up to the players to kind of, I guess, if this is what the NHL is presenting, I think it's going to be up to the Players Association to kind of fix it. I'm just going to use the baseball analogy, and I think I've probably used it before, but, you know, if you're a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, you're playing in the NL Central, you have 6 teams. Well, if you know, for a team that plays in the AL West, I mean, there's only 4 teams, so you have less teams that compete for a division championship and a guaranteed playoff spot. The one thing that's great about the NHL playoffs is an 8 seed can beat a 1 seed, and you like to see those matchups every year. And I think what they're talking about now, since the conferences would be uneven, is that you'd have like some wild cards thrown in, and I don't know. I'm not even sure how that would work, because would the West technically still play the West, or I've seen other proposals where you just throw all the teams together and have the top 16. You have a 1 versus a 16, and do a complete bracket like that. But you know, I guess Detroit's been waiting for quite some time, and I can understand their position that they want to be in the East, and they probably should be. But if you want some conference balance, I mean, if I'm the league, I'd like to have them and the Blackhawks in the West, just to not only because of the original 6 teams, but they're very well-run organizations that draw well on the road, and I think you'd like to have them there. Now, Detroit gets taken care of, but then you have Florida and Tampa, who absolutely get slapped to the face for, you know, if it's a geography question, they have to travel ridiculous amounts for their divisional road games. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know if you could do something. I personally like the 6 divisions because it's I think it gives you something to play for. If you have 4 conferences, 8 teams in a conference, I don't know how, you know, realistic it is to win a division championship, or your odds, and how that kind of goes, and what does it even mean then? If you're going to be guaranteed a playoff spot, but I'm not sure exactly how I'd fix it. I would somehow try to figure out Winnipeg to the West, and I think for the long-term survival of Columbus, granted they've been in the league a lot shorter time than the Red Wings, but I think for them to be able to survive, especially with the way their management has kind of turned things over once again, is probably to move them to the East. I think that'd be the easiest thing. I think they have a good rivalry going with Pittsburgh, being so close, and I hate to tell Detroit to wait, because Mike Ilitch has done so much for the league and for hockey and for the city of Detroit, but that's kind of my take on it right now.
Absolutely. And you know what? For the Winnipeg Jets, short term, I would agree that you have to get them out of the Southeast Division. It's really not fair to them. They've got just a ridiculous amount of travel to do there. But, you know, for the Winnipeg Jets, it's a pretty easy swap. I mean, okay, Southeast Division, really simple. Take out Nashville and maybe put Winnipeg in the Central Division. I mean, it's not, you know, the greatest travel schedule for them still, but it's certainly better than what they've got now. And then you've also made it easier for the Nashville Predators, because they're definitely more southeast than Winnipeg is, which is basically in, you know, true north. So it's a pretty easy solution. I don't see why you have to realign the entire league. For Detroit, I would agree with you. I'd like to see them move to the East. It would be a fantastic rivalry with Pittsburgh, and certainly other things you mentioned there about Mike Ilitch and all he's done for the league. And certainly the Detroit Red Wings have been just a model of consistency over the last few years, and I would agree they need to be moved to the East. As, you know, I could, I guess, argue that Columbus might be moved to the East as well, although, I mean, I guess you consider a Midwest. Either way, it's a messy situation. I don't like what they've got planned out now. I think they ought to sit back, redraw it up, take another look at it. If it's really about geography and nothing more than geography, then you got to make it make sense on all levels. That includes Florida teams, that includes Winnipeg, that includes Detroit, Columbus, Boston, and all the other teams. You got to base it off nothing more than geography if that's what you're going for. All right, folks, we are going to talk now about an article that really caused a bit of a spur today. Pretty interesting morning for us at the Penn's Iceberg. And for those of you who are wondering, that was me tweeting earlier today, your host. And so we're going to go back to the beginning of it here, if I can find sort of the first few posts that we're doing here. It's literally taken me forever to scroll down, just because it was such a long sort of debate. All right, here we go. We got it here. All right. So we're going to read a little bit of the article. And, by the way, let me just also say here to Evil Shero, who is, I believe, still tuned in, if I say anything that's incorrect, we invite you to call in, 347-838-9078. That goes for all you fans, too, because we will answer questions here at the end of the game. Just make sure, please keep it classy, please keep it clean. That's all that we ask. We will answer your tweets as well, and Facebook posts, emails, anything you want to shoot us. We'll feel free to answer it at the end of the game. So I will talk just a little bit about this article that was written by Evil Shero. Again, if you haven't followed him, please follow him on Twitter. He's a lot of fun, a lot of great hockey insight here. I'll read you a little bit of the article here. It starts off with all statements true as of 3/2/13. There seems to be a disturbing trend happening on the amazing collective consciousness that we call the Internet, calling for the immediate termination of Pittsburgh Penguins head coach Dan Bylsma. Now, this curious movement is coming from the most educated corners of Twitter, Facebook, and other social media. Here's where I took issue with it, okay? Now, I don't mind being quoted in an article. I never mind that. I'm a journalist. I understand that it's going to happen. My issue is that if you're going to quote me, or, rather quote the Penn's Iceberg, I would, A, like my quote actually addressed rather than it being in a block of quotes, and B, I would at least like to be featured in an article that really showed both sides of the story. And I didn't feel, this is my opinion, not a fact, I didn't feel that it presented equal sides of the fence. I thought it provided great stats. It was certainly some really, really well-written opinions backed by stats. Here's the thing. Just because you have a opinion that's backed by statistics, it's still an opinion. That doesn't make it a fact. And that was essentially the issue that I took with it. Now, obviously, if you saw this on Twitter earlier, this is all rehashed. We already had it settled. It was certainly a friendly debate. There was never any hostility or anything. We're here at the show. We're good friends with Evil Shero. I'll continue reading the article as we go along now. Right now, there's a small subculture of Penguins quote-unquote fans who are fervently calling for the head coach Dan Bylsma. They want him gone, no questions asked. They want to see his resignation in the Trib framed with bolded letters. I don't understand this underlying need to shake up a first-place team. I'll get more into that in a moment and the reasons that I feel that they should, and we will actually provide some stats on both sides of the argument. And we'll actually read the stats that are in this article, too, because there are some really interesting ones. As of 3/02/13, here are the standings in the NHL. As they're framed here on this screenshot, the Pittsburgh Penguins are 5th. Now, this was a little bit earlier, so obviously games tonight might have shaken up the standings a little bit. They're 5th with 28 points in the league at that point. They're in 5th place in the NHL. Let's take a look at the Eastern Conference, shall we? Now, again, things have shaken up since because of the games tonight, but this was earlier today. The Penguins were 2nd in the Eastern Conference and 1st in the Atlantic Division. Now, another criticism I hear from the educated masses is that Bylsma has world-class talent and doesn't know what to do with it. Now, if standings do nothing for you, I will show you the Penguins' offensive ranking pre-Montreal game. Still 2nd, does not count 7 additional goals. Actually, the Penguins are now 1st, and this, of course, was before the Montreal game. They are 1st in the league in goals for. So I would disagree with somebody who says that Dan Bylsma doesn't know what to do with talent. I would completely disagree with that. I don't think it matters one way or the other. If you take a look at it, he won the Stanley Cup, and we had our talent then, and yet he did so well in the regular season without our talent in 2011 and pushed Tampa Bay to 7 games, ultimately losing, though, in the first round. Again, we'll cover it more later. I just want to get through the article here. The Penguins are 2nd in goals scored, or it would be rather 1st now out of 30 teams. Our power play's been pretty good as of late. They are now 3rd in the league as a power play, and that's, again, out of 30 teams. Before you change your minds, I have to point out that this is a pattern of success. Isn't only relegated to the season. It's been a trend since 2009. In fact, only one other active NHL coach has had more success. Todd McClellan, with the highest career winning percentage, has yet to win a Stanley Cup or a Jack Adams, an achievement that Bylsma has done. 3rd place on the list is Boudreau, has no cup. Babcock has 1 Stanley Cup, but no Jack Adams. I would argue this, a Jack Adams doesn't matter even slightly. It's a consolation prize. At the end of the year, you're not looking to raise the Jack Adams at center ice. you're looking to raise the Stanley Cup, okay? And getting to the playoffs isn't an accomplishment that any Penguins fan is going to be overly proud of. 16 teams make the playoffs in the NHL. I don't care. Here's the thing. The Pittsburgh Penguins have the two greatest players on earth on their roster right now. On earth. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. And you can't get past the first round. You can't get past the Flyers because you're getting knocked off your game. And then a couple of weeks ago, the Penguins were just handled by the Flyers. Again, the same way that they were in the playoffs. These are my concerns, okay? These are, again, opinions. That's why, for me, I would rather have a shake-up sooner rather than later. Because, I mean, hey, best case scenario with Bylsma, again, in my opinion, is that we get to the playoffs with them and then we lose again in the first round. Because right now, all that any team needs to do to beat us is just to adapt the playing style that Philadelphia has adapted. Here's more of the article. In fact, since the year 2000, only Bylsma, Julian, and Tortorella have won a Jack Adams and a Stanley Cup for the team that they are currently coaching. That's quite an elite company. Again, these are all facts. These are indisputable. They are used to back up opinions. So I'm going to summarize, since I think the audience that I'm trying to present these facts to may be overwhelmed with the amount of numbers and charts that I've shown so far. And yes, a pretty interesting picture there of Dan Bylsma raising the Stanley Cup. So let's talk a little bit about this article, okay? It's got some very well-written opinions backed by facts. Let's start with the reasons that I think, and we will get Jason's take on this in just a moment, some of the reasons that I think that Dan Bylsma should be fired sooner rather than later. I get that we just won the game over Montreal. I think that actually did more bad for him than good since we gave up 6 goals. Let's take a look at some stats here. Now, the Penguins are first in the league in goals for, 76. Fantastic. Can't say he doesn't know what to do with talent, and this is with very little contribution from our third and fourth lines. So the Pens have been just stupendous offensively this year with a ton of goals by Chris Kunitz and by Sidney Crosby. Conversely, let's take a look at the goals against, all right? Right now, the Pittsburgh Penguins have 64 goals against. That's 22nd in the league. 22nd in the league, not going to cut it in the playoffs. 6 goals a game over the last 2 games, 6 goals against the Flyers. Hey, not going to cut it in the playoffs, right? You're not going to win 7-6 games in the playoffs. That's what we had last year, and we didn't win that series. That series didn't favor us. Let's take a look at the power play numbers. Right now, 26.44% of the power play, that's third in the league. Great power play numbers. Can't dispute that. Let's take a look at the penalty kill, which is equally important in the playoffs. 80.68% right now, 17th in the league. That's below average. I mean, it's not the worst in the league, but certainly you'd like to have it a little higher, especially with the fact that the Pittsburgh Penguins' penalty kill in years past has been so great. I'm not sure where the drop-off has been. It had to have been, I would think, Jordan Staal leaving. Certainly Aaron Asham was somewhat of a loss on the penalty kill. The loss of Mike Rupp a couple years ago may have hurt that as well. Shorthanded goals against, or I'm sorry, rather shorthanded goals. Pittsburgh Penguins have none. Zero shorthanded goals. Conversely, shorthanded goals against, the Penguins have 2. Now, that is among the league's worst. The only teams with more than that are Buffalo and Detroit, and I would argue that Buffalo currently might be one of the worst teams in the NHL. Let's take a look at time shorthanded, because here's where what I'm going to try to argue really comes into play. Now, my argument here is that the reason that Dan Bylsma should be changed out with another coach is that, to me, the players don't, I don't want to say that they tune him out, because you never want to say that without knowing it. I'm not in that locker room. I don't know. But they're certainly not playing by his system. They're certainly not playing by the system that he established in 2009. That's not the way the Penguins are playing anymore. 88 times shorthanded. 88, okay? Just to give you a perspective, only 5 more teams in the NHL, New Jersey, Edmonton, Philadelphia, Buffalo, and Dallas, have more minor penalties than that, or times shorthanded than that, rather. So, and a lot of these penalties, I would argue, are just really bad penalties. I mean, they're not penalties that are saving a goal. They're not penalties that are diving to block a pass or tripping. They're, stupid penalties like covering the puck on a face-off. They're dumb penalties like putting the puck over the glass, in out of play for the lay of games. We saw Tanner Glass do that the other night. they're dumb penalties like the one that Tyler Kennedy took last night and continually takes. So that's a problem because, again, in the playoffs, you're not going to be able to take the type of penalties that we're taking right now, as evidenced by the fact that we did just that last year against the Flyers. That did not favor us. Let's get our partner Jason's opinion on this. Where do you stand on Dan Bylsma, his future with the team? Do you think that Bylsma has the ability to adjust this game and to, in a way, discipline the players and get them to play team hockey rather than individual hockey again? Do you think that he has that ability? Do you think that he can turn this around? Or do you think that the players at this point have just kind of, they've decided how they're going to play and they're going to play that way?
It's a little hard to say. I think Dan Bylsma does have it inside him to adjust or to learn. Let's use that word, because he's still a pretty young coach, and even with a Stanley Cup under his belt, he's still got, I'm sure he would admit he's got a lot to learn about the game as far as how to coach. You look at the way that the last couple of off seasons that the Pens have exited. Take the series against Montreal in 7 games. So you have Game 7 on home ice. You absolutely you crap the bed on that one. It's just all around just poor defensive play. And they never adjusted to picking up Mike Camilleri, who absolutely in the slot or the open parts of the ice. He didn't go on to do that much the rest of the playoffs, but he killed the Penguins, and the team kind of never adjusted to that. The next year, you have. I kind of give everybody a little bit of a pass in the sense that I don't know what's expected of you when you lose the 2 best players in the game in Crosby and Malkin, but at the same time, you're versus Tampa Bay, you're up 2-0. You have another Game 7 on home ice, and you just can't get it done. It was a 1-0 game. You can't muster. You lose a 2-game lead. You lose home ice, and then you just you can't get it done. I understand. With Jordan Staal being able to shoulder as much of the burden offensively as he can, and the team being just playing a really grinded out type of style. So that's the year I kind of give everybody a little bit of a pass because no one was healthy. But then you have last year, and it was an absolutely just crazy series historically, and just to watch. It was dumbfounding, just the way that series played out. Just the number of goals scored, just porous defense on both sides. I mean, Philadelphia did eke out. I think eke out a win in 6 games, but Pittsburgh again, they lose the first 2 on home ice, and it's tough to say. I think the thing about Dan Bylsma is people have to realize, Michael Therrien, when he was in Pittsburgh, he was Dan Bylsma before Dan Bylsma. Eddie Olczyk, who was, Eddie's a great analyst. I think he's one of the best, and I enjoy him a lot. He's a great asset for USA Hockey, a Hall of Famer. Congratulations. But he was in over his head. And, Craig Patrick's one of his final acts was to bring in Michael Therrien to kind of clean up house. I mean, nobody, it was obviously Eddie was in over his head, and you needed somebody to rope the guys in and to buy into a system because they were just a poor defensive squad. And I think if you can YouTube it, it's one of the best rants in sports. It beats, I think, Jim Mora's playoffs and Allen Iverson's practice, where Michael Therrien just chews out his team defensively, trying to be, one of the worst defensive squads in the league, and they're soft, and it's a thing of beauty, really. But every coach kind of has a shelf life, and sooner or later, the guys tuned him out after going to Stanley Cup final, and then Michael Therrien's act kind of wore thin on the players, and Ray Shero, with his first coaching change, brings in Dan Bylsma. And I think, when that change happened, I think the players were just elated to have a fresh voice in the room. Give Dan Bylsma credit because I think he's a player's coach. He's very easy to talk to. He's a very likable guy. I think he knows a lot about the game and can teach it well. But, I think he does have his shortcomings. I'm looking at this year's roster and trying to see what's changed over the course of the last couple of years. I mean, here I am nitpicking as a fan certain questions. I mean, sometimes I'll pick on the power play, and before I look at it, I look at our stats, and the power play second or third, and you're sitting at home on your chair yelling "shoot" and all the things you enjoy as a fan about the game. But some decisions I have is, Ray Shero goes out and gets Zach Boychuk, and immediately they put him on the line with Malkin and Neal. Well, they bring up Will Bennett, and all of a sudden he has to, I don't know if he has to earn it or pay his dues or what the deal is, but he's getting time with Dustin Jeffrey and Tyler Kennedy, who just aren't getting it done right now. And another thing I think I'm kind of nitpicking on is scratching Simone Dupre for, I think, 2 straight games. Was it Florida and Carolina? He's a first-round pick, and if you're going to devote time on having him on the roster and to grow him, to get him experience as a player on the bottom pairing defense, I think he needs to be in the lineup more often. It's just some little things that I'm noticing here and there, and in the game adjustments, it's hard to say. I mean, because I think obviously at the end of the day, the onus is on the players whether they get it done or not. I mean, you look at the Carolina game, and it was completely Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity. Which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result when the defense doesn't cover anyone coming down the slot and they're cheating, and they score 4 goals from right in front. So, Ray Shero's, his job's on the line too, and that's the thing you have to think about this. I think every GM, one of the cliches in the business is, every GM gets 3 or 4 coaching changes before they, are the ones to go. And this Dan Bylsma is his second coach, and if he decides to bring in somebody else, that'll be his third. He's going to be the one at the end of the day to ultimately decide if this gets done. And it's not if the Penguins. I don't know. I would probably let it play out through the playoffs and to see how things go for the rest of the season. But obviously, you don't want to waste another prime year of Malkin and Crosby's career and a great opportunity at another Stanley Cup. But having said that, I think they'll probably give him a shot to finish out the season. It all depends how they lose. If they lose and how they lose. If they lose 7 games and they play great defense and they lose by a goal, so be it. They got beat. But if they lose like they've lost the past couple of years, that's a trend that that needs to be changed. And it doesn't matter, I think, in the NHL where your seed ends up. The Penguins, when they won the Cup, were a 4 seed. Last year they were a 4 seed. They didn't get it done in the first round. Same with Montreal. It's just, and the Kings, look at the Kings last year. They were the 8th seed. They were the hottest team. It's how good you were playing at that particular time. What kind of hockey are you playing? Yeah. And the Kings, they had great goaltending, but they gelled as a team, and they beat the 1 seed, the 2 seed, and the 3 seed. It's just, and they won the Stanley Cup. So that's the case.
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, and we do have Vivo Shero here on the line. We're going to take his call in just 1 second. Really quickly, before we do you worry about the way that we're currently playing with taking the penalties and porous defense? Do you worry that that's going to translate into the playoffs, being that we're in a shortened season and the playoffs are a little over a month away?
Yeah, I do. Because, I think, especially when you give up 4 power play goals to Florida, and then that starts to become a trend. Then you have to look at everybody. That'll bring your PK number down right away, especially when Florida was just absolutely atrocious going into that game on the power play, and the Penguins give them a couple of gifts. But I don't know what they are right in front. I don't have all the stats right in front of me, but the one thing I'd really be curious to look at is, I know special teams are a huge part of the game, especially if you look back at the Flyers power play in the playoffs last year, but I want to see the Penguins numbers at 5-on-5. I think that kind of paints a pretty good picture of where you are as a hockey team. What you're able to generate, what kind of chances you're able to generate when everyone's on the ice and everything's even. So But yeah,
Sure.
the little things do add up. I mean, over tendency of a short season and especially a short playoff series. I mean, those little things can add up and burn you.
Sure. All right, we are going to take Evil Shero's call here. He's live, and certainly he will be giving us some great insight. Hey there, Evil Shero, are you with us?
Yeah, hi, gentlemen. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing?
Good.
Should I call you Evil Shero, or do you have a name that you prefer to go by?
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine for now. I know it's a bit silly, but that's kind of how people know me.
No, that's okay. That's all right. And first off, we just want to say, again, for anyone who saw the Twitter dialogue earlier, friend of the show, great hockey insight. Follow him. We want to get your opinions on Dan Bylsma, and certainly we read the article here on the show. Some really great writing. What's going on here? What do you think? What do you think should happen, and why do you think? Why do you think what you think? I mean, we read the article, but it's just better to hear it from you sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I don't do this often, but I mean, I'll apologize if I, acted inappropriately. I was getting a little heated, if you couldn't tell. But
No. It was a respectable.
No, it ended up well, and I'm glad that it ended up the way that it did. But I guess the main point we disagree upon is, I guess to me that wins are just paramount as far as how you judge someone's performance, how you judge a hockey team as wins. There are, incredible concerns with how the Pens have been playing. That I do agree with you. And also, if there's another bad playoff performance, yes, his job is in jeopardy. I think the whole organization after especially after a Philadelphia series, I'm surprised they didn't go from top to bottom and kind of reevaluate everyone. Maybe they did and decided that was the best crew that they had available. But like I said, they're not without concerns, but I think what we disagreed upon was what we thought was the most important thing. And I've always gone under the philosophy, no matter how you get out of a dirty game, that Montreal game was just, it was gross. I mean, there was just bad play all around. And as long as you come out with a win, in my eyes, I'm not saying a job well done, but they did their job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we were fundamentally disagreeing, where, I don't know, I really don't think that they're playing a perfect game right now. And besides Tyler Kennedy, I don't know who else to blame, because I just love blaming Tyler Kennedy. It could be the coach, who knows? But that's, for calling for his resignation now, it would just seem silly. I did a little bit of research on what conditions other coaches were fired under, and they're a lot more dire than what we have going on here. I mean, we have a first-place team. It's like the freewheeling 90s where we're outscoring people now, 7-5, 7-6, which isn't necessarily what you want out of a hockey team, especially through a 7-game series. But end of the day, you're still getting wins. You're still in first place. You're still, I mean, it's odd to think of, but in the next month, you're going to start looking at those seeds every single day as far as where you stand. We're on top now, and it can only help down the way.
That's a good point. And, we are very close to the playoffs, just as I mentioned earlier, a little over a month away. And you certainly, I would say that you put that very well. And the only point that we disagree on is wins versus, in a way, defensive concerns. And hey, maybe firing him right now isn't the best way to go. I guess I just worry because I, like so many of you, am a very, very passionate Pens fan. Mm-hmm. And I just want to it's terrible to see a team that has so much talent like this Penguins team does. I mean, we have so much talent that it's not even fair. I mean, you shouldn't even be allowed to have the type of team that we have under a salary cap.
And how long have we been waiting for a healthy roster?
Right, exactly.
It's made it worse. We have the talent, we haven't been able to use it for years. And, playoff records, I know you guys discussed the Tampa Bay series, and I thought that was a bit of an anomaly because of all the injuries we had. And then the Philadelphia series was one of the most bizarre series. I've been watching hockey for about 20 years now. It was one of the most bizarre series I've ever seen on both sides. It was just crazy. So
I think the one thing that comes up a lot is, when you talk about a coaching change, and I don't think anyone would ever do that lightly, but when you look at a roster that has a lot of key pieces tied up for a long period of time, sometimes getting rid of the coach is the easiest way to deal with that. Whether you can't trade the whole team, you can trade a couple players. I mean, I don't know who's going to want Tyler Kennedy at this point in time right now, but it's fan slaughter, and it's something to think about. But I mean, I think it's just because it's easy. It's easy something to do. I know it's somebody's livelihood and their job, and you think about families, and it might be the hardest thing someone ever has to do. But I think when it's talked,
absolutely,
about,
it's fun to talk about. It stimulates great discussion, and case in point, what we went through today. But you have to wonder, I'm obviously not affiliated with any NHL team. You have to wonder how drastic of it is to change a coach like that. How bad it shakes up the team. It seems easy on TV where there's just a new guy behind the bench, but who knows what is involved with all that as far as who else is out there. I mean, usually if you fire someone really quickly, the logical choice would be Tony Granato, which I wouldn't be heartbroken about. I think he's a competent coach, but I don't know if they're just... I always feel that that's something better to wait at the end of the year to do and not mid-season, unless, if the Penguins were in 10th place like the Rangers are right now, or as of yesterday they were, I mean, that's when you got to start going into that panic mode because you want to get into the playoffs by any means possible.
All right, and certainly we are running out of time here. I don't mean to cut anyone off, but we're getting over the limit here for this show. So I believe we're actually off the air at this point, but we will definitely put this up anyways for recording purposes, and everyone will be able to hear the end of this show. But, hey, definitely huge thanks to Ivo Shero for coming on. We appreciate it so much, man, for you to come and, share your insight with us, and we hope you'll be able to come on some other time.
Yeah, I'm definitely. You've definitely earned a long-time fan. I love listening to a few podcasts. Late at night when I'm doing work on the computer and whatnot. So, you've definitely earned my fandom, if that means anything to you. So, and I'm glad we got it worked out. So.
It does, and I know for me and for my partner Jason, it's very, very well appreciated, and we love doing what we do, and this has been it's such a fun show to work on, and as you said, it does create a lot of fun debate when you're talking about coaching changes and things that could be shaken up and changed with a team. And in any case, we'll figure out what the deal is going to be here pretty soon with the Penguins and with Dan Bylsma's future, because as we said, the playoffs are only a short time away. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and again, thanks to Ivo Shero for coming on and joining us tonight. Jason, thanks so much for all of your insight tonight, and we'll see you again next week.
That was great, Casey. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, buddy. All right, everyone, have a great week.